I had been in love with a hot boy for 3 years. And on the day I was about to muster up the courage to confess, my beloved mother pointed at him and made me call him brother. Does that sound heartbreaking? However, that was a milestone that completely changed my life. Please like and subscribe before I tell you about my story. I'm Selena, 16. I was born into a not-so-wealthy family in Massachusetts. My mother is a single mom, and it wasn't easy for her to work and raise a child like me alone. I grew up both physical and academic abilities were very normal. In short, I was extremely faded among the crowd. But the guy I was in love with was the exact opposite. His name is John, and he was an extremely handsome and talented upper-class man. Why did I know him? How could I not know him when at least 7 out of every 10 schoolgirls gossiping about John like him? Of course, I was one of them. The first time I met John was when I picked up a kitten that had been left in a carton box in a vacant lot behind the school. The kitten was probably hungry. It cried incessantly. I was struggling to find food for it when I heard a male voice behind me.
Is the kitten yours?
I turned around and couldn't believe my eyes when that person was John. Oh my God! John bent down and rubbed the cat's head, then gently broke the bread in his hand and gave it to the kitten.
What's its name?
In the moment, before I could load his question, I blurted out, Selena. Subconsciously answering, I suddenly burst out. He asked the cat's name, not my name. My face was embarrassed again, and I explained. No, I'm Selena, and this cat isn't mine. I don't know what its name is. John laughed out loud. His smile was even more beautiful than I ever imagined.
Okay, so let's call it Little Selena.
From that day on, we had Little Selena in common. Since neither my mother nor his father liked cats, we bought a bungalow and put it in a vacant lot. John asked me to go and buy more things for the kitten. We roamed all the streets of the beautiful city of Boston. I realized that we talked very well, with seemingly endless topics.
Actually, I've known you since before I met you in the vacant lot.
Huh? Really? How could he know someone unremarkable like me?
I heard you sing once. Your voice is amazing.
Our meetings grew more frequent, helping me confirm that I liked him, and he liked to hear me sing. Then one day, I decided to gather all my courage and confess my feelings to John. It was the first time in 16 years of my life that I wore a dress. The first time, I took off my thick glasses, and the first time I borrowed my mom's makeup to transform myself from an ugly duckling into a better-looking swan. Selena, my daughter is so beautiful. Because I have an appointment with a friend at night, so I put in a little makeup. But before that, I want you to meet someone. That's the person I want to remarry.
Hello, we're here.
Oh no! Showing up in my house were John and a man. They too looked pretty similar. Probably, the person my mother wanted to marry was my crush's father. So, me and the guy I like officially became brothers? John stood opposite me. His eyes were as panicked as mine. Selena, this is your Uncle Victor, whom I want to marry. And this is John, who will be your brother later. John stretched out his hand to me and said,
Hi, I'm John.
I was already annoyed in my heart at the fact that my mother wanted to remarry. And now, seeing John's faint and known expression made all the repression in my head feel like the last straw that broke the camel's back. I screamed like an unreasonable child. I don't agree with you to remarrying him. We have been doing so well for so many years that there's no need for him. What's good about him? Selena, who teaches you to be so disrespectful to adults? Did you just scold me because of him? The mother who used to love me so much but just scolded me because of a man? I took all my anger and vented on Uncle Victor. You come out of my house right away. This place doesn't welcome you. A resounding slap sounded amid everyone's amazement. I looked at my mother in shock. This was the first time that she had hit me in 16 years. I cried quietly and ran away from the house, ignoring the sound of my mother calling out to me from behind. It was only because of him that my mother no longer loved me. Furthermore, because he was John's father, our budding love affair officially died down. I hated him. In the following days, I always went to school very early. And after school, I stayed up outside until late at night. When I got home, I ran straight into my room and closed the door, paying no attention to what my mother wanted to say. I absolutely did not compromise on my mother's and Uncle Victor's remarriage. Out of nowhere, my class started spreading the rumor that John and I were going to be brothers. Everyone teased me, saying I was lucky to be her sister of the hot boy at our school. I was tired, so I grabbed my bag and ran out. I hadn't been back to class the whole day to hear them discuss. I fled to the vacant lot behind the school, hugging the kitten with a heavy heart.
Why don't you go to school?
John came out of nowhere, standing right in front of me. What do you have to do with it? You just pretended you didn't know me a few days ago?
If my father and your mother remarry, you'll be my sister later. How could it not be related?
These two words, sister, touch the most sensitive thread in my heart. Who's your sister? My mother absolutely will not remarry. I knew my selfish attitude was exactly like that of an immature child, but I also knew I was not content with the two words, brother.
Why do you disagree? Don't you understand how hard it's been for your mother to raise you alone for so many years?
I myself didn't know why I reacted so harshly to my mother's remarriage to Uncle Victor. Was it because I didn't want her to remarry, or just because he was John's dad? In fact, deep down, I was scared. From childhood to adulthood, I only had my mother. I was afraid that after she remarried another man, she would no longer love me. I also couldn't help but see my first love, which hadn't begun yet but had to end just because of the label of brothers. When I got home from school that night, I saw Uncle Victor walking out of my house, his face sad. That expression told me that between me and the man my mother loved, she always chose me. And I was always the most important person in her heart. The result was the same as I had wished. But somehow, I still did not feel happy. Probably because through the door, I saw my mother crying. For so many years, we had always relied on each other. No matter how hard it was, my mother had always been resilient. So this was the first time I saw her crying. She was heartbroken because she couldn't be with him. I didn't dare face my mother. I just staggered walking down the road. Suddenly, I bumped into a bunch of young men. They teased me and bullied me. Suddenly, one of them pulled out a bottle of wine.
Hey girl, finish this bottle of wine and we'll let you go.
They lifted my chin and poured wine into my mouth. I never had a drink before, so my first reaction was a choking cough. But they didn't care. They just laughed, deep and low.
Come on, put down the label, good girl, and take another sip.
I don't want to drink! I frantically threw out their hands and hurried away, but they still held my arms firmly. They smirked.
It's okay if you don't drink, but let's hang out with us tonight. We'll teach you to do something else more fun.
I was scared and wanted to run away, but they didn't let go, firmly dragging me towards a nearby bar. What are you doing? Let me go! I struggled but could not overcome the strength of the two boys. Unable to predict what could happen next, I panicked to tears.
You guys let go of Selena.
An angry scream came from the opposite side. It was John. John ran over and pulled my hand away from the two young men and got into a fight with them. This was the first time I saw John so angry. However, when fighting a bunch of individuals like this, John couldn't prevail. I was so terrified to see him beaten to the point of bleeding that I screamed for help. Anyone! There's a troublemaker here! These young men were afraid of more people coming that would cause trouble, so they glared angrily at us and laughed. I burst into tears and ran up to support John, seeing as his handsome face was now bruised. John, are you okay? John wasn't as gentle as normal. He was really infuriated by me.
Selena, don't you know how to distinguish right from wrong? Associating with bad people and learning they drink till drunk?
I bowed my head slightly, finding out that because I fought with those guys earlier, I smelled of alcohol. No wonder John thought I was drunk. Well, if he thought I was drunk, I would get drunk once. I hugged John, pretending to be drunk, and confessed all my pent-up frustrations to him. Idiot! I don't want to be your sister! I like you so much. Why do I have to be your sister? I cried in discontent, saying that I liked him, But I didn't think that there would be someone crazier than me. It was John. John kissed me. Oh my God! I rolled my eyes in amazement. The one who pretended to be drunk was me, but the one who did the unthinkable thing was John. That kiss told me that the person I liked me too. After that evening, John seemed to avoid me. Even if he met me on the road, he would pretend not to. Could it be that the kiss that day was my imagination? Although John did not appear in front of me, he asked someone else to take me to school and supervise me home. He must have been afraid that I would associate with bad people. His name is Leo. He was John's best friend. He was not as easy to talk as John, and he even knew how to piss me off. I'm not a 3-year-old kid. I don't need a nanny.
I know. 3-year-old kids aren't as headstrong as you are.
So, can you stop following me?
No. John has asked me to watch out for you. He really cares about you like a sister.
My pent-up feelings over the past few days had no place to relieve, and now Leo was trying to piss me off. Are you John's servant? Why do you follow everything John says? If he cares about me, he would come to me directly. Why does he have to order you to do one thing after another? He kissed me yesterday, but soon after, he wanted to be my good brother? Isn't it fun to joke with me? Leo listened to my unintentional words and was stunned. The atmosphere was suffocatingly silent.
He doesn't mean to joke with you. You think that only someone who tries to hold back like you is tired? It's true that John knows you like him, and he likes you too. But he knows clearly that it's not only you two's business right now, but also your mother's and his father's. John's mother died early, and Uncle Victor has definitely encountered so many difficulties raising John alone until now. So what's wrong with him giving up feelings for you because he wants his dad to be happy with the woman he loves?
Leo finished speaking and turned to go, leaving me standing rooted to the spot. In the following days, I remained silent, not knowing how to speak to my mother, and John kept avoiding me. However, what scared me the most was that my mother started to be ill. It was just my mom and me, and I was too clumsy to take care of other people. I laid next to my mother at night, seeing her flushed, hot. No matter how hard I shook, she didn't wake me up. Mom, wake up! Don't scare me! It was midnight. I didn't know who to rely upon, whereas my mother's condition was constantly high feverish. I woolly picked up my phone, wasn't able to think of anything, and called John. John, help me! My mother is having a high fever. Later, Uncle Victor and John rushed to take my mother to the emergency room. Uncle Victor followed the doctor for the admission procedure, and I couldn't do anything but stand outside the door of the hospital room. I bowed my head. Inwardly, I was tormented and self-reproaching. John patted me on the shoulder to comfort me.
She's okay, don't worry.
It's because I don't listen. I can't take care of my mother. But I selfishly don't take care of her. It's my fault, right?
The doctor's in the emergency room. Don't blame yourself.
I didn't know how long I had been waiting when Uncle Victor finally opened the door to announce that my mother's condition was stabilized. I was so happy that I burst into tears.
Should I tell John to take you home to rest? Let me stay and take care of your mom tonight.
I hung my head in shame. Thank you for helping my mother. The next morning, I went to the hospital very early. Through the glass of the hospital room, I saw Uncle Victor graciously taking care of my mother, who was weakly leaning on him. Seeing my mother happily smiling with Uncle Victor, I realized how selfish and petty I was. Just out of fear of not wanting to share her with others, I forgot that she needed to be loved too. I walked into the room, took my mother's hand, and said, Uncle Victor, I'm handing over the person I love the most in the world to you. Hopefully, you can make my mother happy later. Uncle Victor happily hugged my mother. Looking at this scene, I suddenly understood what John had done before. I ran to find John, then found him sitting under a tree in the backyard of the school, feeding the kitten. Seeing me come, he was momentarily stunned. I stretched out my hand to John. I'm sorry for making you feel awkward. I hope we can get along well later. Brother.
Okay, sister.
John laughed. How relieved his smile was at that moment. I realized that I had been like a frog in a well. I only knew my little space of sky, so I thought John was everything. Later on, I know that the world is so big, and I will meet many other people. They will come into my life and stay in it for a long time. For example, Leo, Leo, Leo.
Riusciremo a distruggere anche questo slime? Vediamo, conto su di voi.